The pharmaceutical industry is raising the alarm over the health department's newly gazetted increase in the maximum single exit price for medicines in 2026. A rise in the sector had not been expected. They're now formally asking the Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, to reconsider the decision and grant an exceptional increase to bring the adjustments in line with the 3.2% inflation rates. To unpack the potential impact of this on medicines prices, investments, and also regional manufacturing ambitions is Aspen's Senior Executive for Strategic Trade Development, Stavros Nicolaou. Stavros, hi, good to have you back with us on The Close on Business Day TV. Were you surprised with this? Because I'm sure you were expecting something that was inflation linked.
Right. Firstly, thanks very much for having me back on. And yes, we were indeed, as an industry, rather surprised. As you correctly point out, inflation is running sort of in a range between 3 and 4%, and to have been granted a 1.47% increase is significantly below inflation. But more importantly, I think is well below what your costs rise by in the sector. I mean, it's well recorded what the wage settlements for the trade unions were. They were closer to 6%. So the 1.4%, 1.47% is rather surprising and disappointing at the same time. But I guess not is all lost, because we were in a very similar position actually as an industry 3 years ago, and we did make an appeal to the minister, and an exceptional increase was granted then. And I think what we're really asking for here as an industry, we're very sensitive to finding the right balance between a sustainable industry on the one hand, where you're able to supply medicines regularly and timelessly, so you try and achieve that on the one hand, and also on the other hand, you want to make these medicines accessible to patients. So striking that balance is a very important balance, but that balance certainly is not at 1.47%.
No.
It should be closer to inflation.
There were talks beforehand. I mean, this didn't just come out of the blue. There were talks beforehand to say this is the figure that we're looking at.
The minister has a pricing committee, which is an advisory committee. Of course, he's not bound by any decision of the pricing committee. It's merely a recommendation that the committee makes to the minister. And as we do every year, the pharma industry made representation to the pricing committee. But you never quite know how the message lands, of course. We did make a case for 3.2%, and there are various formulae that the department and all the pricing committee gazette for consideration. And I think we've always appealed and asked for, as an industry, that there is certainty and predictability around any formula that gets applied. And I guess that's our appeal again. So our appeal, earlier this week, we wrote to the minister on Thursday last week. So our appeal that we repeated early this week is twofold. Can there be a disclosure around the formula that arrived at this 1.47%? And then the second is that consideration be given to an exceptional increase to bring it up to inflation, so that we can have a sustainable supply of medicines in the marketplace. But also, it's not good for investors, domestic or foreign investors who wish to invest in the sector, if a very basic thing like an annual price increase carries this degree of uncertainty and unpredictability with it.
Do you think this has got something to do with the latest inflation targeting figure, to try bring inflation down so that, say, for instance, they can get into this new range? It was 3 to 6%. Now they want it at sort of 3. Has it got something perhaps to do with that?
It was very hard to say how the pricing committee considered the matter. In the absence of receiving their calculation, which, as I indicated earlier, we've now requested. So in the absence of that, it's very hard to understand how they would have applied their minds. I think what we're saying is, given current economic and inflationary drivers, the way we understand them, one would be very hard pressed to understand how you would arrive at 1.47%, quite frankly,
Yeah.
because it doesn't bear relevance to the economic realities that consumers face, that the industry faces. And then from a consumer perspective, we know that the medical schemes and the administrators have already factored a higher percentage into consideration, because the medical scheme increases that were announced in recent weeks have been in the range of 6 to 10%. So the 1.47%, we're really struggling to understand what the reference point is to that 1.47%.
There seems to be a good relationship between yourselves and government. It looks like you will be able to at least talk about it. It's not end of days yet that you're stuck on 1.147%. Am I right?
Look, we do enjoy a good relationship. It's a constructive relationship with the department. There are many issues that we disagree with them on, and many that we agree on. And I guess this is one of those where we've got a disagreement. At this point in time, it doesn't mean that disagreement will endure. As I said, we can draw on precedent on 2 or 3 previous occasions, the most recent being 2023, where we found ourselves in a similar position. So we're hoping and holding out as an industry that there's a very similar conversation and we get closer to the 3.2% that we had advanced in our arguments to the pricing committee. I should just hasten to add that it's an exceptional increase because only one annual increase per year is permissible by the department. So that's already been granted, and the start date for that is 1 January 26.
Sure.
So that is why there is, by our legal interpretation, a provision in the law that enables an exceptional increase under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
And it is that exceptional increase that we are now in discussions with the department on.
Oh, let's hope you get to that. Stavros, thank you so much for joining us on Business Day TV. Appreciate it. Thank you. That was Stavros Nicolaou, Aspen's Senior Executive for Strategic Trade Development.